Hello. Welcome, guys, to Sorcery Saga 3 for the Sega Game Gear. And I do not have my earphones with me. So I guess I'm gonna just have to improvise. Okay, I'm back. I was thinking about a. Okay, well, let me start off by saying that I um let's think about a new topic for my next video. Um, but my last one with the Intech light, like time breaker light gun. Well, it can't really be called light gun. Uh, yeah, with, with the Intake light breaker light gun or time breaker light gun. It's a really long name, but excuse me. But I'm having a great time playing with it. I just finished beating Time Crisis 3 after such a long time. I got rid of my CRT. I want to say like 12. No, like around 2017. Okay, where I'm at. Somehow I have to get to that. Okay, so I've been playing with the Lycan that I got. I finished Time Crisis after such a long time. It is, believe it or not, probably my most favorite Lycan game. You know, I remember Gangster Town. I remember liking that back on the Master System. Um, and I remember playing Time Crisis 1, House of the Dead, um, you know, Duck Hunt, Hogan's Alley. I like Lycan games, right? Not to the same, um, not to the same degree as RPG and fighting games, but I do like them, and most of that skill is up to you, how well you can aim and shoot and things of that nature. With that said, am I really just one shotting these guys now? Uh, it's all Curry now. So I don't know. On my next project, I kind of wanted to do a whole like on kind of video showing off really good Lycan games. However, I don't have a Lycan for every system. I only have one for the Sega Master System and for the PS2, and I guess the PS1 now. So that's not a lot to come up with. I no. Ew, stop it, you creep. Uh, because I know there's just, and the thing is that like the Menacer and and the Super Scope, they didn't really have a lot going for it. Like I think the Master System had a lot more um Lycan games than both the Super Nintendo Sega Genesis combined. I'm thinking in my head like I remember playing this game, I remember playing that game, uh, and and the Genesis just and the 16-bit era just they just didn't have everything right. You know that I I gotta really look and see. I know Lethal Enforcers, um, and that was another thing. It became too complicated. Like you couldn't use the the Menacer on Lethal Enforcers. You got to use Konami's. Sorry about that, guys. You got to use Konami's own gun. And I have that gun when I got when I bought my Sega CD. This was back in early eBay. People were treating eBay like a swap meet, and I remember getting a Sega CD, and it was include. You know, the guy just tossed it in there like he just wanted to get. I guess he just wanted to clear out his garage or something, and just okay, okay, all right. So that's what I was missing. Of course. So so anyway, so that's another thing you have to do. Um, the Saturn had a lot more uh, variety though. I have the Lycan for the Saturn, and of course it was Virtual Cop One, Virtual Cop Two, House of the Dead. I believe Area 51 and Maximum Force. They they were compatible with the I forgot what this is called. I have to. They all have each names, but the Lycan on the center. I think that was compatible with those games. But yeah, I kind of want to do this whole thing with Lycan games. It's just kind of sad that you know it. Lycan games has always been around. There's like an appeal to it, um, but with the rise of LCD TVs and flat screens, it's just it just kind of goes away. It just kind of went away, and the I depending on your TV, it, it's kind of sad to see. No. All right. Well, I guess just to fill it out. Whoa. Really? And but man, like on games, man. Uh, they're the only and I'm thinking about like the Xbox. The Xbox only had one Lycan game, and it was it, it was House of the Dead 3. Now I have the Xbox Lycan, but I don't have House of the Dead 3, nor do I have a TV that's compatible with it. It's just one of those things. I think it became as soon as LCD TVs became a thing, it just became too difficult. It became too difficult trying to it became too difficult trying to I guess make the technology compatible with uh, compatible with modern TV standards or something. It, Now there have been attempts. I know the when I forgot what it was. House of the Dead Overkill on the Nintendo Wii. That I, I remember getting that game, and I bought like an accompanying like gun holster, and I would say aiming is accurate, but very laggy. It I would look at the crew. I would try to aim and shoot, and it'll take a while for the cursor to actually be registered. The, it was very. Hold on, right, I'm probably gonna just cheat on this one, man. Let's see. Uh, I can't seem to. Uh, I thought I answered all the questions right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to save because I don't know what's going to happen. Did I just go up? This trick? Ah, great. Ah. They, this game really doesn't want you to, Okay, well, what items do I have? I got sake, I got golden apples, I got some curry, I got... Huh. You know, what what Intech Gaming did for Lycans recently, I think it's probably the right approach. Cause I gotta tell you, that is incredibly fast. Incredibly fast, guys. I'm telling you guys that I've never seen. You know, I've tried other solutions, and none of them ever like. We're going on the next floor. What the hell is this? This fight's kind of easy. Well, been pretty much everywhere. A pepper? I feel like he has a headache. There we go. Where was that? Oh, yeah. I think I know where I have to go now. Oh. Of course. You know, I don't think those Lycan games for the 360 And I know there was Time Crisis 4 on the PS3, but I played Time Crisis 4 on in arcades. Trust me, an entire entire dollar. It got too expensive. Oh. I don't know where to go next. This is kind of tough, guys. I'm not joking. Um, huh. So have to just keep looking around. See, the things about these RPGs, sometimes you just gotta keep looking. I would say my most favorite dungeon crawler is Shining in Darkness. I kind of want to get, what was it, Shining Wisdom? A whole new section. Most. Oh, this guy's gonna be tough. But getting back to Intech Gaming, that sensor that they use for the PS2 games, I I think that's the direction like in games have to go now. It has to be really fast, really responsive, and 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 accurate. Now, there was something I didn't say in that video is that when I was shooting at the screen, I was actually like I was basically sitting on my bed, leaned way back because that's the only the registers. I could not get a and I was too close to be in that screen, and the accuracy wasn't right, so I had to lean back most of the time to uh, to shoot at the screen. I honestly I needed maybe I maybe needed like 6 7 feet, and I was standing closer to 4 to 5. So I actually needed to like lean back to get a proper distance. Oh man. Uh what gonna level me up again? I'm probably gonna need one of these. Haha. Huh. So yeah, I feel that if there's a Time Crisis 5 or something, it's gonna have to come with like a sensor and be very accurate. Also, I gotta point out that the Intech gaming light gun says you could use it as a 16:9 screen, but on honestly, it just all honesty, it just doesn't like quite A spider sheep. You know, it like honestly, like that 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 sensor and the gameplay work the best when the screen's at 4:3. 16:9, it just it just doesn't work. I even like I tried like using it through widescreen. I tried using a widescreen patch, and I don't know, like the game doesn't. I think it's more problem with the game than the sensor. But the game was never really meant to be played in a 16:9 aspect ratio. It just wasn't. So even though I got you know, I widened the game, I like even though I forced it in 16:9, the aiming is always a little off. So it just won't work that way. Oh, really? Okay. That, yeah, but I think that's the game issue. The sensor works fine. Even when I was playing it at the Retro Gaming Expo, like as I held, you know, as I was shooting and I saw the lag and I saw how it was pointing, I could tell it was a game problem. That you know, they had Time Crisis 3 at the expo, and I was and at Intech's display, in Intech's booth. And I'll be honest, when I started trying it, I was very impressed with with how responsive it was and the accuracy. But as the enemies started to appear on the edges of the screen, I could tell it was becoming less and less accurate. And instantly, I knew that this game was never meant to be played in a 16:9 aspect ratio. They just put it like that, and I could also tell that there was a lag. Now, how I know it was a good product was when I was aiming and shooting at the same time, and those shots were coming out really fast, like pata 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 pata. But but I but I could tell there was latency and accuracy was a little off. And the latency I attributed to the fact that they were using like this XBY kind of, you know, HDMI adapter for the PS2, which I've seen these around, and I know they're terrible to begin with. As a fighting game fan, you know, as a fighting game fan who looks at this stuff, I could tell, yeah, you do not want to play on one of those. And well, I could see the accuracy was being a little off at the edges of the screen, and it's because that, you know, Time Crisis on the PS2 was never meant to be played in that aspect ratio. It just wasn't. That game is supposed to be played in a four by, you know, 4:3 screen. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, if I buy this, I know the kind of setup I'm gonna have to do in order for it to play right. And I was correct. When, you know, like when I brought it home, I connected it to my PS2, I and I use my Brad 2X because it's the fastest it's the fastest adapter I had for RGB, and I set the screen up at 4:3, and it worked wonderfully. It worked perfectly. I was like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. Now, is there a little bit of delay? Yes, it's very minute. You could hardly tell, but it's playable. It's incredibly playable. And I think that's the route that Lycan Games Ford will have to go to if they're still going to come out. I don't think it's much of a thing anymore. Really, just three? You know, I, I, I think Time Crisis on the PS4, no, on the PS3 had issues in regards to that. I I think they also used a sensor, but it wasn't fast enough. And hmm. Really? I'll be sold starting January 1995 in Miyajima, Hiroshima. Delicious. Combine. Is that true? That can't be true. Oh, wow, that's right. I just looked it up on Google. Oh my God. An advertisement in a game. Wow, that's funny. That I'm impressed. I was heavily cross promoted, and it looks like someone is paying Sega for the rights to keep on selling them. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, Puyo man. I guess you can still get them if you go to Japan. You know there. You know, I've been eating sushi at Kura Revolving Sushi. Uh, um, you know that restaurant, and they always have cross promotions. And there was this one. There was this one thing with Kirby, and it had pink. It was like Kirby, but it had like a pink mustardy sauce. So, and I tried it. It was pretty good. Then there was like one for Naruto. No, no, yeah, it was one with Naruto, Demon Slayer. So all this cross promotional stuff. I think it's like a very Japanese thing to make food inspired by like making like food inspired off like anime and games and stuff. I'm really wondering, was there a Sorcery Saga cartoon? I feel like they could make a cartoon out of this. The sheep. Hmm. Yeah, I forgot. Cats hate the cold. I really don't like cats. I really do not. I'm allergic. You know, they hang around me. They, you know, they. I was at a bookstore, and the moment I stepped in, I the moment I stepped in, I could feel my sinuses flaring up. Like oh man, I think I might be coming down with something, right? And I look around, there's like cats everywhere. It's like, oh hell no. But my wife wanted to look for a book, so we go in. But you know, I'm trying to keep my distance, and I'm trying to keep my distance, and the cats like I feel like they know I don't want to be near them, so they just start following me around. And when I see one, I'm like, I gotta get away. And like there's one particular black and white cat, kind of like the same shade as Sylvester from Looney Tunes. That one was following me around, and I'm like, oh, great, and I'm like looking, and I find like a Spawn graphic novel, I think volume 14 or something, and I'm thinking like buying it, and then like I look through it to see make sure it's in good condition, and there was a couple bents here and there, so I just left it. But when I put it back, you know, the cat was like on a shelf, like right next to me, and it totally freaked me out. I was like, oh snap! I stepped away. Oh man, look at that. I should probably save it. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, let me just finish exploring this area before I go anywhere else. Oh, of course, I forgot about that. Oh, no. Punks. Okay. Looks like I'm set. Oh, that's the magic cannon? I thought it was a pepper. Los meow meows. I did tell my wife if she really wants a cat, it has to be a Maine Coon. Because I don't know, cats I've seen are for sissies. I really do. Right? But a Maine Coon, you know, is probably the only acceptable cat that I'm willing to be around, just because it just doesn't do anything. Right? They're big, they're large, right? They, you know, they got. If you look at them, looks like they're looks like they have a presence to them. How big are these cats that they actually cause damage to a 16-year-old like that? see. Great, just an empty chest. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get some pickles. Really? All right. I'm always finding these cats in the same block. I wonder. You know, my mother-in-law's dog is like a very small dog. I, not a very effective animal to be guarding a property. I had a Doberman. Well, well, we had a Doberman. My parents, after I moved out, but like, I he passed away like maybe, yeah, like 2 years ago, and that was rough. It really was rough because had him around and he guarded the my parents' house and stuff, and played with them, loved them, right? And it was like about a week after he died. I had to go to the doctors, right, to do like a checkup or something, and my wife was accompanying me. And right when we got out of the doctor's office, there was there was a woman like walking a Doberman, an exact like a young version of the dog that I just have, like it could have been him. It could have been him. That's how close he looked, and oh man, I was like, I did not have to see that right now. Yeah, that it really did hit me that he's gone now, right? And I remember, and I got to my car and my wife was there. I was like, damn, I did not want to see, I did not have to see, see a woman walk a Doberman because you know, I did that, right? You know, and it was rough. I'll be honest, it was rough. behind me. It man, and that was rough. Watching that. Not one step, and oh, that sucks. What's the point of these empty chests, man? What does that? Oh, must. Oh, it looks like it's a key item or something. Oh. Is it it's telling me where the enemies are, isn't it? See, it's just waiting for me. Yes. I kind of want to get a Puyo man now. Okay, I'll save it here. Ugh. Actually, that's a pretty good effect. guess being cursed at sucks. Oh man, what am I doing? Uh, don't don't do this. Oh wow. Oh, this is a tough call. You know, I'll just leave it behind. Hmm. I was thinking of a. I was also thinking about another video I want to make, but I don't. I'm kind of stuck in the same situation as I was with my import games. With my import games, there were so many different angles to consider as to why would people import games and where to find them, that sort of thing. Back in the day, not every mom and pop store dealt with that. Not every video game store dealt with that. Um, I remember. I remember this one mom and pop store. Uh, they did deal with that. They had contacts in Japan that would like ship some of the stuff over. But all in all, like, you know, they would like take in the game you want and then have someone from Japan buy it and then ship it over. Or they'll get or I believe the owner was half Japanese. If I'm remembering right, the owner was half Japanese. He had relatives in Japan, but he didn't really. He wouldn't import a game unless you specifically requested it. Items. Oh, map. Look at the map. Ah, really? Oh, But yeah, he would do that, right? Like he would import games if you requested it. I believe like they sent him a catalog and like he'll contact his relatives or something like that. I don't know all the the process, but that's how it was, and that's how a lot of like that's how a couple of people that I knew how they got their games, right? That was Bare Knuckle 3, Street Fighter 2, um, Troubleshooter and stuff like that. It was and oh wow, that looks cool. All right, I'm just gonna hold on before I do that. I'm gonna heal myself. So so importing games was not really prevalent. Like some of my mom and pop stores did it, and they usually had contacts in Japan. But there was a lot of different angles. Then there were stores that specifically dealt with imports. They had like imported movies, like VHSs, video games, laser discs, records. I forgot the name of this place, but they had all this stuff straight from Japan. And then like a little later, you, the like there was this one store that dealt in nothing but imported games, and I think that's where most of the import games in my area came from. Was this place called Die Hard Game or Die Hard? But there were so many different places and angles to get it. Um, and then of course there were catalogs and stuff in the back of magazines where you could call, give them a credit card number, and they'll like ship you the game. If they had it, or if not, they'll order it, and it'll take like a month or two to get it. Uh, but yeah, there was so many different aspects to that, and that's why I had trouble with that video because I just didn't know how to frame it and how to explain it to people that getting these games, you know, it was possible, but it wasn't easy, and especially for a kid like me. Like after I found out about the whole Streets of Rage fiasco, I wanted Bare Knuckle 3. It's like if I can't have Ash in Streets of Rage 3, then I want Bare Knuckle 3. But but I also had to consider the fact that I had to buy a Honeybee cartridge, and that was an additional expense. And buying Bare Knuckle 3, it wasn't cheap. They added costs. I think at the time games in Japan cost a little bit more because of the inflation or something. Then I had to buy a Honeybee cartridge, which was another specialty item. And I remember, you know, Streets of Rage 3 cost around maybe $50, $40 to $50, and then Bare Knuckle 3 itself was like 70 was 70 $80, and then the actual Honeybee cartridge was it's like another 20. And to me that's like almost buying another system. Like the Genesis I think was $99 at that point. I was like, damn, I could almost get another Genesis for that price. So there were like a lot of things I was considering. And let me just freeze this. So that's why I had a problem with that videos, because it was just so many different little aspects, and I just kind of stuck to the reasons why people would import. And every time I would import a game was for for one reason or another. Um, the like, jeez, like all the reasons I explained was the reason why I would I got a game. Um, I remember when Bleach first came out, and it was really and I liked it. You know, it was, to me, it was pretty popular. And I remember I went to the Best Buy, and they had import games. The believer they had actual import games for the DS. So I bought a Bleach DS. You know, and I know it was Japanese, but at the time there was no Bleach games in English. So I bought it because I like Bleach. Eventually, we would get an English version of the same game, and that was it. Why I prefer to buy a you know, Ninja Warriors on the Japanese version instead of the American version? Well, because I had blood. You know, the boob bouncing thing was just a bonus, but it had green blood. Right? It was a little closer to you know, there was blood in the original Ninja Warriors arcade game. So the Super Nintendo one should also have blood, even if it came out green. You know, that was it. You know, to sidestep some of the censorship, and then like and then Sin and Punishment. I thought for sure we were gonna get Sin and Punishment on the. Uh, I for sure thought we were gonna get Sin and Punishment on. Really, can't keep going down. I for sure thought we were gonna get like a Sin and Punch. Like it was gonna be the last game on the 64. It was gonna, and that game really did push an envelope, but in a lot of ways for the 64. It really did. And you know, and we never got it here, but you know, Sin and Punishment, like it really was. You know, it was one of those games that we never got over here. Well, eventually came out on the Wii Virtual Console. Um, but I remember I was telling this, like, what was there was this cool Nintendo rep at the store I worked at. Um, and I was telling him like, yeah, like like I remember telling him like I was always been a Sega guy, but there's always some things that she doesn't have light magic in her, does she? Oh man, really? Why am I having trouble with this guy? Anyway, I remember talking to him, and I told him like, uh, I do a lot of importing, and I always told him like, Nintendo has cool stuff, but they keep a lot of their cool stuff in Japan. And I remember telling him like, I know about I know about like Fire Emblem and every once in a while we'll see like a Famicom magazine about games that never showed up over here. And I gave him a good example like Sin and Punishment. Like I remember telling him like Sin and Punishment was was a game that could have been Nintendo's the 64's greatest send off, right? Every every system, every Nintendo system that I know of had like a great send off game that kind of showed its power. Like, like we mastered it. Here we go. And I tell them like Nintendo has all these properties that they never brought over here, and it could have made me more acceptable of Nintendo if they brought that stuff over here. But eventually, that stuff would come out. Shadow. Like they remade the first or the Super Nintendo Fire Emblem on the what was on the Nintendo DS. Then I remember they remade. Then they brought out Sin and Punishment on the Virtual Console, and then brought out its sequel on the Wii. So, uh, a lot. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to. Really, you know. Oh man, I also told him about Getsufu Modern. Like, you know, like I told him Nintendo had a lot of cool stuff, but they never brought it over here because one reason or another. Okay, now I'm gonna save it because I feel like I'm gonna end up messing up something. Great. Anyway, going back to the video I want to make, the I want to kind of show what games I would have loved to see on the Saturn. Because even though it was kept in the dark for like about a year and a half, no, for like a year and a half and 2 years, somewhere around that time, a year of 6 months and some change. Um, there was there was some games I was really hoping to see, like new iterations. I was thinking that as soon as I got a Saturn, I was all these games were going to be available to me, and that just wasn't. And I just imagine in my head like, can you imagine instead of that PlayStation, my family would get me a Saturn, and all these games would have been available. Like, oh, let's go to Toys R Us, and I would have instead of getting like WCW, I would have come and I saw like a new Comic Zone, or saw the newest Eternal Champions, or saw the new Sonic, a new Fantasy Star. I came into the 32-bit era kind of late. There we go. I'm still getting a lot of XP from this guy. So I kind of want to describe like Michael Latham and a couple other guys did describe what their plans were for their games on the Saturn. Um, if they were allowed to continue, because from what I understand, Sonic Extreme took up a lot of resources and just didn't come out. That's and I guess that's how it happened. Oh, yeah. So I would imagine. Now this is I wanted to like play the game, play the like play a game that I wanted to like on this. Like, for example, I'll talk about like Comic Zone, right? After I saw Astol and I saw how they're pulling off Street Fighter Alpha, I'm thinking, can you just imagine how good a new Comic Zone on the Saturn would be? I didn't read it. Like, apparently, I ate a rotten egg right now. Oh, really? Like, what? What I mean now? Now, now Sonic on the Saturn I think would have been very difficult to pull off the way I imagined it. Because I saw a couple of those screenshots, and I'll be honest, I couldn't make heads or tails of how this thing was going to control. Like the level's gonna shift around you and this and that. It's gonna it's gonna disorient a lot of people. Oh man, I'm just not doing a lot of damage. Okay, here by the sound effect, I'm doing a little bit more damage than usual. Nothing's working. Nothing's working. You know, um, I'm stuck in the same section. Oh, crying out loud. Oh, he has full health. Oh, I was trying to save these for like an actual boss battle, but damn. I hear a click. Another one? Like, okay, well, anyway, back to the video I want to make. Saturn, like Sega Lord X, this YouTuber I watched, excellent Sega content. It, he covers things that no one else does, and that I could relate to because, I grew up on Sega. So he made this video about why the Sega Saturn failed. And he was on a couple of podcasts and he talks about it and gets into better detail. When I think of this video, I just don't want to repeat what he said. And I think about what I want to say, and it's a lot of what he already said, so I don't know how I want to approach this. But he basically states that there was a lot of games that never showed up, and Sega was not in a good. A lot of games that never showed up, and there was just like nothing there. And like in a video, in a podcast, he states that it's like Sega pushed the reset button, and I could relate to a lot of that because there were hints. There were hints of stuff that might show up. I remember when my brother brought over the his Saturn. I looked at the back of the box and I saw Eternal Champions, the Final Conflict, like a little cutout, like a little screen that obviously it was from Challenge of the Dark Side, but it showed that the newest Eternal Champions was going to show up. I believe that there was going to, when the magazines were covering the very early footage of Fighting Force, I really thought that was that we were gonna get another Streets of Rage. Okay, here we go. You found it. What the? Breaking the moon, really? I'm gonna break the moon. Oh. I broke the moon. I'm just not doing enough damage to this guy. Really? Is that thing made up of multiple sprites? Man, the Saturn, man. I man, like the games I wanted to see. e- I I would imagine a 3D Echo the Dolphin using the Knights engine. The No, not the Knights engine. The Panzer Dragoon engine. By Zwei, they kind of already mastered it. I'm pretty sure they could have pulled off a decent 3D um Echo the Dolphin, right? And Zwei had some transparency effects that were a little weird, but it was very effective, right? I just item. not, let's see. Now, a Fantasy Star. Now, this is something interesting. They were working, like, even if it wasn't a Fantasy Star, even if, like, they were managed to bring out Skies of Arcadia on the Saturn. I think Skies of Arcadia started development on the Saturn and switched over to the Dreamcast. But that project took quite a long time, and it came out like like later in the Dreamcast life. So it was it it, 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 it did come on later in the Dreamcast life. It did come out later in the Dreamcast life, right? Huh. Yeah. It did come out later in the Dreamcast life, and I guess it took too long, but I would have if it came out on a Saturn, they could have advertised it as like from the makers of Fantasy Star 4 or Fantasy Star 2 or something like that comes Skies of Arcadia, and that enough would have been enough for me to to consider buying a dream a Saturn, like, or getting a Saturn. But the thing was, there wasn't enough there. There really wasn't enough there to merit a purchase like that. It And I kind of wanted to show in this video I want to make it's kind of a scatterbrain. I need to focus it a little bit, but I kind of want to like show what I would have loved to see on there that would have merited me trying to get in a Saturn. First off, I'm gonna name them one by one. I'm gonna start off with Comic Zone because I've seen the 2D capabilities of the Saturn, and I myself wouldn't have been put off by 2D. With the 2D technical prowess of the Saturn, they could have done an excellent. They could have done an excellent Comic Zone, making it looking more comic books, more comic book like Forzo. They could have, with its expanded color, expanded memory, it would be much more well animated. The computer could have been a little bit more decently balanced. They could have toned down the difficulty. It took me a good minute. It took up to my late teens, to finally be able to beat that game. Um, you know, you know, co- and they could have done the backgrounds in a 2.5D kind of setting if they wanted. Much like Clockwork Knight and and Bug. Yeah, I'm thinking of those two games. They could have all that stuff in the background and then just pull it off. Let's see. Okay, come on. Freezy. Now, Streets of Rage, they did. They never even bothered. Like, I don't. Now, this deal was kind of tough to pull off because what IDOS showed Sega I guess Sega wanted to do it themselves, but I don't think they had a team capable enough to do that. I don't think they had a team capable of making a 3D Streets of Rage. And IDOS, they had, I don't know the full details, but IDOS, they had I guess a prototype, and they tried to sell it to Sega, but I guess they saw where Sega was going, and I guess they really wanted to sell it to everyone, and then just call it Streets of Rage 4. But I don't think Sega was willing to put the Streets of Rage name on their competitors and stuff. But what I saw going on in that prototype looked like it was very possible to do a Streets of Rage in 3D. Um, and and I don't know. I guess if they had you know, someone competent enough to pull it off, to it would have been something um, that could have helped bridge, or would have been attractive to the Genesis owners, to Genesis fans. You know, bring on Yu Suzuki for the music. No, not Yuzo Koshiro. Uh, there's someone at the other side of that. Say Streets of Rage. Now, I'm gonna get Sonic out of the way. I think Sonic. The thing is, trying to bring Sonic into 3D, you really have to understand that you're talking about rendering, um, trying to like render and bring out chances are probably needed to destroy the moon. The egg. Now, like to make a fast Sonic and that hardware would be very difficult. I'm thinking about the speeds of like Sonic Adventure, and I've seen racing games on the Saturn, and I guess it's possible, but that's on a fixed path. If you want to have that explore, if you wanted to compete against something like Mario 64, you're gonna have to be able to render a lot more space or a lot more different directions in a short amount of time, and I don't think it was possible, no matter how much RAM or whatever you put on that thing. I don't think the Saturn was capable of doing 3D in that manner, or to that extent. Huh. Really? So I guess how a Sonic could work in 3D is, I guess again we will have to stick to a pre-rendered Sonic like they did for Sonic Extreme, but trying to make an obstacle course in 3D, you probably have to take a uh, it it probably have to be really simplified and be basically kind of like a race car or like a racetrack with loop to loops, and at certain points you will have to take the control away from the player and let like an animation go through just to kind of keep that sense of speed. But oh man, it's very difficult to try to make a 3D game like that. I think if they went the 2.5D route, that probably could work, right? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. A 2.5D Sonic where I guess you could jump into the background and have some 3D assets in there. I think that's something they could probably do early enough before before like Crash Bandicoot and Mario 64. Let's see. Really? Oh, they respawn. I'm surrounded. You know, I kind of. Ah, so depending on the door you enter from, you'll be taken to a different. Man, I think a 2.5D Sonic could probably be the best if it came out early enough. Then, if it brought over enough people, if it was impressive enough, it brought over enough Genesis faithful, it could probably lead to a pretty stable base in which they could probably work on a much more advanced 3D Sonic. Um, of course, sports games has to be there, but from what I understand, Sega they contracted a lot of different people for their sports games. So I don't think so I they never had a dedicated team until the Dreamcast era. Like now, Eternal Champions was something that I think could have done well. Um, you know, they're just gonna okay, gonna. So that's just a trap. Okay. I would have loved to have the Fantasy Star collection that was done in Japan brought over here. When I heard that there was a Fantasy Star collection in Japan on the Saturn, I got really jealous because, like, imagine having all of the Fantasy Stars on one disc that early. Man. Now, to my now when I say there was very little Genesis representation on the Saturn, I really do mean it that very little carried over. I can only recall two games that 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 held that torch, and that is Dark Savior. No, Dark Savior, which could be seen as something of a successor to Landstalker. I like the Landstalker games. Wasn't really my cup of tea, but I did have somewhat fun playing it. Um, that Beyond Oasis or Legend of Oasis, there's that game, and most of and I'm thinking of another game. I just Beyond Oasis. Damn, there was another game I was thinking about, but I forgot. Anyway, there was just very little representation. Okay, let's see. Okay. Seriously, right? Huh. Oh man. Let's see. I'm still trying to think of the game. Okay, but Dark Savior, that was probably just one. It's a something of a sequel to Landstalker. So is Shining Force 3. I wasn't into strategy RPGs till much later, but Shining Force 3, but that came really late. It wasn't even going to come at all. Bernie Storer kept a lot of those games back. Um, That's what he did. Um, man, that's why I that's why I say that the Dreamcast feels more of a successor to the Genesis because they re- they really did try to bring out they really did try to bring out um, a lot of a lot of the stuff that made the Genesis, special. Um, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog with Sonic Adventure, they made it. They made it, and it felt like, oh, Sonic's back. He's back from the Genesis. A lot of people really, I know, a couple of homies I knew at high school thought that, oh, no, oh wow, so there's where it went. I just got to fight him. A lot of homies thought that it went from the Genesis to the Dreamcast. That's how insignificant the Saturn was that a lot of people didn't know that it didn't exist. Now we gotta understand about normal people is that they'll buy a couple of games for a system and then that's it. They won't necessarily be invested in the next system. That's why sports games, are usually the last things to come out on a lot of these consoles because I remember a guy buying like we had FIFA soccer like 2007 on the or was it 2009 on the PS2 or something and it was a very late. It might have been, yeah, FIFA 2010, 2011. We had that for the PS2, and people were buying it. You know, so they didn't care about the PS3. Yeah, like oh, if I could still play FIFA on my PlayStation 2, I'm gonna. Why do I have to bother getting a PS3 or even a PS4? Those that's how it was. So that's how insignificant um the Saturn was is that they didn't care, you know. And but no, but going back to the Dreamcast, it felt more like a successor to the Genesis than the Saturn because of all the games it offered. Time Stalkers, if you wanted a sequel to to Dark Saber Landstalker, Time Stalkers that was there. Um, Echo the Dolphin saw a sequel there on the Saturn. Defender of the Future. There was an Echo the Dolphin game on the Dreamcast. You know, and of course, Skies of Arcadia from from the people that brought you Fantasy Star. It was even advertised from the makers of Fantasy Star, Skies of Arcadia. That was brought over, and of course, all the sports games that got visual concepts. But yeah, Sega Sports, NFL 2K. If you like Joe Montana, you got the NFL 2K. World Series Baseball continued onto the Saturn or onto the Dreamcast, and of course Saturn too, but onto the Dreamcast. So you had so when the Dreamcast really came out, it really did feel like it was a true successor to the Genesis. And of course, all the new stuff came in like Jet Grind, Jet Set Radio, Shenmue, um, um, I'm thinking about other stuff, and of course, the arcade tradition with the Virtua Fighter and Crazy Taxi. The Dreamcast really did feel new, and and carried on the Sega legacy that the Saturn never could. Oh man, I know I'm just talking out of my ass, man, but man, the Saturn really dropped the ball. They really dropped the ball with the Saturn by not continuing that's the Genesis legacy. And if it just had at least a handful of the games that made the Genesis great, they could have pulled it off. I really believe they could have pulled it off. I remember even seeing, oh my god, QuickTime. This was before we had the internet, and at school there was another guy that was into the Sega. He, we saw a QuickTime little animated clip of a Streets of Rage prototype. When I saw that, I was like, "Oh, a Streets of Rage is coming out on the Dreamcast. That's gonna be great." You know, it was very rough. It was made. It was like barely bigger than a postage stamp. But I saw that, or saw like a video like I saw that still frame. I was like, "Wow, it's gonna be awesome." Let's see. Oh man. All right, I'll throw away the eggnog. Now where I'm at. Okay. Oh. I guess I'm gonna have to dance. Man. I'm gonna save in case I do something stupid. Oh. Something tells me to send me back. But yeah. Alright, let's see. Map. Yep. Ah, this sent me back. I, it, oh man, I'm really I'm thinking how to describe these games I want on the Saturn. A Comic Zone could probably do very very good if they. I know the creator, he wanted to put in some 3D elements, but I would have kept it 2D. You know, bump up the. Of course, it's gonna be 320 by 240, so I would have made it. Um, I would have just bumped up the color, bump up the animation. Of course, the music was awesome. They could redo the. They could put in new tracks with the same band. Uh, the voice lines would have to be would be awesome because it's all on CD. And I guess if they're gonna have to do some 3D, like like I could see the guy like being in like a semi 3D background world kind of thing. But honestly, it should all be 2D. That's how I would have done it, and it makes sense. A comic book is a 2D image. They're drawings. There's no reason to put them in 3D, right? What Michael Latham had in mind for Eternal Champions was great. When he was in the Arcade Attack podcast, he was describing um, something that was very unique, and you know Virtua Fighter's cool for what it is, but it's very, very plain. And what the new Virtua Fighter coming out, it looks like they finally corrected its problem of being plain. It has more style to it. There's more personality to it. Old Virtua Fighter had very little of that. I think the main selling point to that is that the main selling point to the first Virtua Fighter is that it's a 3D fighting game, and very little else. Eternal Champions had a lot of personality and a very good presentation and a storyline. What he wanted to do with the Saturn version of Eternal Champions is kind of wrap up the story, but have different factions: a chaos, an evil, and a good faction. And the story will play out depending on how many times you can win in a fight, in the like how many times you win throughout the course of the tournament. And things change depending on if you win or lose. Like the backgrounds become more dilapidated or sad or whatever. Magic. And your fighting style changes whether or not you, you win or lose or whatnot. And that is something new and interesting. Now, it would also have to be a good fighting engine. As awesome as Killer Instinct, or not Killer, as awesome as Eternal Champions looked, it was a pretty janky game. Like, it wasn't really well balanced. Uh, Damn. I was kind of hoping it would be on the other side. Okay, I'm gonna. I've been finding these things for a while now. I'm still not causing enough damage. I, sh- I should be able to. I should. Oh no. Yeah, considering how much I've been leveling up, I should be able to beat him like in 2 turns. Not. Do I really have to dance? I have to dance. Okay. Let's. Man. I think the reason why I like Eternal Champions because it's a game I played with my friends. It really. I know it's not a very good fighting game. It's not like it needs some work in terms of like hitboxes and timing and stuff like that. It needs a lot more polish, but it was cool because of like how it looked and the atmosphere and the presentation. It oh, well, you're kidding me, really? Oh, that sucks. I guess I have no choice but to fight him. Oh man. There's a little alien behind that guy. You know, me getting a Saturn, I got it at the appropriate time because this is way before the prices started going up. When I went to the SoCal Retro Gaming Expo, I saw that Marvel versus Street Fighter. The price went up over $100. I got that game uh, with the case for less than 30. The prices have really gone up, and it's getting to the point where it's pretty prohibited. I don't know. This is kind of funny. Oh man, what am I missing? There's probably a button I have to push that I'm unaware of. Just gonna have to fight him. Yeah, when anyway, going back to when I got my Saturn, I of course I knew about his existence, because that I that's what people my brother got one, and I knew about it from the magazines and hearing about it even before it even came out. Um, And then when it did come out, and I really wanted one, but then like as time went on, I saw I didn't have anything that I want. I just like put it aside, and I kept that aside in my mind, thinking like it's probably the one Sega system I'm not gonna get because it just really didn't have anything. It really did not have the games that I wanted out of a Sega console. That was Sega Rally great? Yes, but I'm not looking for Sega Rally. Was Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 great? Well, yeah, but 3D fighting games weren't really my thing. I like Fighting Vipers. I thought Fighting Vipers was cool when I first played it. But that's just one game, you know. Daytona USA, it's fun to play, but there's not enough depth to it, you know. And I guess it's a little unfair for me to compare, but my favorite 32-bit racing game is Ridge Racer Type 4, R4. And the entire and it was hard for me, and it was in my mind. I was like, there's nothing there. A lot of the games that if I wanted to get, well, a lot of games that did come out also came out on the PlayStation. I'm gonna go around. Oh, it spawned. Now, during the mid 2000s, during the early to mid 2000s, I I love fighting games, right? And even during the 32-bit era, the thing I kept on hearing is that the Saturn version of these games were were bet were always close to or better than the arcade. Ah, man. Okay, this is getting kind of tiring. And going through forums and whatnot, I kept on seeing that the Saturn version of this is better. The Saturn version of that fighting game is better. The Saturn version this fighting this fighting game is close to the arcade or better than the arcade. And at the time, Saturns were cheap. I The games were cheap, and then I just started buying these games, you know, just because I wanted to play them. I and and these and they were great. Like I looked into it because at first I was hesitant to get a Saturn um in the beginning because like first they didn't have anything, but I to me import gaming was like a premium thing that you have to pay for because in all honesty it's like Um, Honestly, like not a lot of people do that, right? But the Saturn was a different case. A lot of people imported. Uh, a lot of people imported because it died out really fast. Like '97 was the last year that '97 was the last year the Saturn had any solid support. And '98 it just had little to no support because of they were focusing on Dreamcast. But honestly, that's how it was, and a lot of people imported. So whenever I would go on eBay or go to these mom and pop stores, these games they were already on the shelves. People sold their Saturn collections as soon as the Dreamcast came out, and they just kind of stayed on the shelf. And when I go ahead and start looking for Saturn games, they were already there. People, I managed to get a majority of uh, well, yeah, majority of the games I wanted, like in less than 6 months. I remember buying X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Street Fighter, KOF '97, and Real Bout Special within like a 4 to 5 month time period. And all these games, they were like very pretty affordable. They were pretty affordable. And and you know I, I you know and the main reason I got these games is because like the collections and whatnot had all these altercations. The sound weren't that great. There was latency issues, and trust me, I noticed the latency issues. I played them and I'm like, this sucks. It really sucks. I'm trying to pull off combos and my timing's like all wrong, and I'll push a punch button and it's coming out that fraction of a second later. I'm like, yeah, that's I could tell why I'm not having fun with these. Okay, this. Oh man. But after I had my Saturn, and I honestly, I at the time I should have thought about it. I should have gotten a Japanese Saturn, but I like the black look of it, so that's what I got. The American one. But by that point, the action replay card was there, and it was like, well, why bother? Okay. I knew there was a button around. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna save it. All right, there we go. Gonna say I thought it was a boss fight, but I guess not. No, wait. File 3. Now, getting my Saturn was a bit of a journey because um, I in the beginning, like, I knew about it, and I was hoping to get one and being disappointed and not having not having the games that I wanted. And then the PlayStation was there just pretty much to fill that spot. And I was happy for the Dreamcast, but in the end of the day, like, it was not the system that I wanted. It became a system I appreciated much later when I got into fighting games with my friends and whatnot, and the Saturn had those experiences, uh, you know, tied down. Like it was. I argue that the definitive version to experience Street Fighter Zero, 3, or Alpha 3 was on the Saturn because of the animation and all the extra uh, modes and having all the extra characters. It is the definitive version, I believe, even surpassing the 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 collection 2, even surpassing that. Now now it now after I got my Saturn though and I got those games, I kept on buying because, like, well, what was I missing out on? I missed out on this game, and I got all these games when they were cheap, when were still more affordable. Now I look now I appreciate it a little bit more. Although most of my games are still Japanese because there's a lot of stuff that wasn't brought over. I wouldn't say these games would have convinced me, but there was a lot of stuff that wasn't brought over that I think could have helped. Um, I think it could have helped, like the Madou Monogatari game on the Saturn. I think it's more of a standard RPG that I, that some people could have enjoyed. Bulk Slash for people that like their mecha games. That's something people could have enjoyed. But a lot of the stuff that came later down the line, I don't know. The Saturn needed to impress early on, and I just don't think it was able to do that. Not especially with Sony's coffers, with the way they were. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna stop streaming here. I've streamed for over 3 hours. These dungeon crawlers, man, they really test you. They really test you. And as soon as I'm done with this, I'm gonna go to Sword of Vermilion, because Sword of Vermilion is awesome. And I did the face fix. I'm I think I'm gonna try to do something later today. But man, oh man, I am up and at 'em, and I feel great. This coffee is really good. As you can tell, I kept on talking. Go Sega. Sega. Peace out, guys. Catch y'all in the next one.